Good morning, everyone. Pete Pardo here from Sea of Tranquility. Welcome to our last episode of Favorite Album of the Year. Kind of going to do a recap, but before we get started, just want to wish everybody a happy Sunday. Most importantly, happy Father's Day to all the fathers out there. So enjoy the company of your loved ones today, family, friends, and just enjoy your day and all the kind of love that you get from being a father, being a dad. So much thanks to all the dads out there. I'm going to be hanging out with my dad in a couple hours. Looking forward to that. So back to the program. So yes, so we covered 1965 through 2019, 54 years. All right. 54 straight days on the channel here of, taking a look at year by year, albums by albums, picking out favorites. It's been an interesting ride. What for me I think was really interesting, obviously the late 60s and the 70s and the first half of the 80s, if you're of a certain age group like myself, very difficult because that's kind of the years that we grew up and we have a ton of favorites. And, the 70s, every year was just stacked with amazing releases from some amazing bands. And, I've always said in recent years that, for me, the 90s was kind of like a black hole for music. But what's interesting is going and covering the 90s on this program, I realized there actually was a lot of great music that I was listening to. It's just that I think I got fed up with certain genres in that decade and started listening to other stuff. But it didn't make the decade any less fantastic for music consumption for me, looking back now, 20, 30 years later. So it's kind of interesting going through this exercise. I really enjoyed it, and obviously you guys did as well. I mean, the views and the comments and just the positive feedback and participation from everybody on this series has been really, really cool. And it went, above and beyond my expectations, which is really cool. So what I'm going to do, I'm changing a little bit the format of this recap episode. Originally, I was just going to pick like 5 or 10 of my favorite years from throughout the 54 that we cover. But then I'm like, it's all going to be focused on the 70s or the early 80s. I didn't want to do that. So what I decided was I was going to pick one year from all of the decades. So I'm going to pick one favorite year from the 60s, 70s, 80s, 90s, early 2000s and 2010s. So that's what I decided to do. And let's be honest, my order, or not my order, but my pick on any of these decades could probably change next week. That's how strong most of them are. But, for today, I kind of went through and I'm like, all right, I made some choices. So from the 60s, and again, we decided to start in 65 originally because that was kind of the year, the Beatles, the Stones, the Kinks, the Who, Cream, Hendrix, all those bands were just starting to make some headway. That was kind of like the birth of rock and roll as we know it, or at least modern rock, right? Not talking about the early rock and roll, but, the album years pretty much. So I'm going to choose 1969 as my favorite of the years in the 60s that we covered. I mean, you got Led Zeppelin 1 and 2, Free, Tons of Sobs, their debut. You got the debut from the James Gang, your album. You got the debut from the Chicago Transit Authority. You got the debut from King Crimson and the Court of the Crimson King, which was my choice. You got Abbey Road from the Beatles. You got Tommy from the Who. In a Silent Way by Miles Davis. Creedence's Green River. Stand Up by Jethro Tull. Santana debut. What else? Debut from the Allman Brothers Band. Let It Bleed from the Stones. Grand Funk Railroad's Grand Funk album, the Red Album. I mean, right there. Those are the ones that I had highlighted from the year, and there's a ton more. So for me, that's going to get my nod. Okay, 1969. From the 70s, for me, the toughest one, because I just absolutely adore 70s rock, and you can make an argument for any of the years here without overthinking this way too much. I went with 1971. My winner of the year was Master of Reality by Black Sabbath. Led Zeppelin 4 is a close runner-up. You got ZZ Top's first album. Got Who's Next by The Who. Salisbury from Uriah Heep. The Yes album by Yes. Cactus is One Way or Another. The Doors' L.A. Woman. Procol Harum, Broken Barricades. Blood Rock 3. Grand Funk Railroad, Survival. Tarkus by ELP. Budgie's debut album. Allman Brothers at the Fillmore East. Gentle Giant, Acquiring the Taste, Deep Purple, Fireball, Mahavishnu Orchestra, Intermounting Flame. 10 years after, Space and Time, Uriah Heep, 2 this year, Look at Yourself. Santana's third album, Wishbone Ash, Pilgrimage, Golden Earrings, Seven Tears. In Search of Space by Hawkwind, Pink Floyd's Metal. Jeff Beck, Rough and Ready, Van de Graaff Generators, Pawn Hearts. Elton John, Madman Across the Water, Genesis, Nursery Crime. Fragile from Yes. Alice Cooper, Killer. Grand Funk Railroad, E Pluribus Funk, Humble Pie at the Fillmore. David Bowie, Hunky Dory, King Crimson Islands, Rolling Stones, Sticky Figures. I mean, come on. That's, again, you can make a case for any year in the 70s. But I think for me, 71 is just unbelievably stacked. Not that they all aren't, but and there's more that I didn't even mention. Again, I'm just going to mention some of the ones that I put in my little pool of favorites at the time that I was kind of pondering over. Let's go to the 80s. All right, another pretty difficult decision for me. I decided I originally was going to go with 84, and then I changed my mind and I decided to go with 87. 87 for me, you know, obviously the big Whitesnake album, the huge Hall of the Mountain King album by Savatage, Overkill's Taking Over, Marillion's Clutching at Straws, Candlemass Nightfall. I mean, that kind of like tilted the scales a little bit for me. Helloween's Keeper of the Seven Keys Part 1, Scream Bloody Gore from Death, Testaments The Legacy, Armored Saint Raising Fear, Pleasures of the Flesh by Exodus, Joe Satriani Surfing with the Alien, King Diamond, Abigail. So I decided to go with 87. Again, 84 was good too. They're all good, you know. All right, let's move into the 90s. What did I choose in the 90s? Where is my choice? All right, so in the 90s, I went with 1992. Images and Words from Dream Theater. Black Sabbath, Dehumanizer. Toto, Kingdom of Desire. Pantera, Vulgar Display of Power. Alice in Chains, Dirt. Faith No More, Angel Dust. Right? Pretty potent little lineup there. Kind of tipped the scales for 1992 for me. The 2000s. 2002. My winner this year was... What was my winner this year? The Odyssey by Symphony X. All right. Also got 6 Degrees of Inner Turbulence from Dream Theater. Vapor Trails by Rush. Porcupine Tree, In Absentia. Oh, was In Absentia my pick? I don't even remember. It was either that or Symphony X. I forget which one it was. I think it was Porcupine Tree, actually. What else? Spock's Beard, Snow. Pain of Salvation, Remedy Lane. Flower Kings, Unfold the Future. Glass Hammer, Lex Rex. Past Lives, the live reissue from Black Sabbath. Down 2, Bustle in Your Hedgerow. Hate Eternal, King of All Kings. Immortal, Sons of Northern Darkness. Meshuggah, Nothing. Pagan's Mind, Celestial Entrance. A lot of power metal and death and black metal in my kind of listing there for 2002. And then we move on to the 2010s. And my choice was 2016. Opeth, Sorceress got my vote for this one for my favorite. Kansas is The Prelude Implicit. And the Neil Morse Band, The Similitude of a Dream, were my runner-ups here. Also, Destroyer 666, Wildfire, Witchcraft, Nucleus, Glenn Hughes, Resonate, Fate's Warning, Theories of Flight, Santana 4, Rival Sons, Hollow Bones, Metal Church, 11, Haken, Affinity, Alter Bridge, The Last Hero. So we'll see what the kind of 2020s bring, right? That'll be really interesting. So I guess in our final kind of words here, I guess everybody feel free to list your favorite releases from these calendar years, or from these decades, I should say. So your favorite, it's Sunday morning, guys. List your favorite year from each decade in the comments below. And give us some final feedback on how you like this type of programming. Like I say, what we're coming up with next is this show called Deep Cut Dive. That's going to be, if not our everyday regular programming, it's going to be at least a few times a week. I'm going to get to as often as I can. If I can do it every day, fine. If not, you know. But that'll also be kind of interactive because it'll allow, basically how it's going to work is I'm going to pick, for each of these shows, I'm going to pick a notable band who has radio hits, greatest hits releases out there that people have bought, and they, you know, play live, and they generally play a set list comprised of songs that they play all the time, right? The usual suspects. And I'm going to give you 5 deep cuts from this band that could be from albums that maybe are well known, that nobody ever talks about, or from albums of theirs that, you know, the general public kind of ignored, that didn't sell well, or like rare B-sides or bonus tracks from box sets and all that kind of stuff. And I'm going to give you 5 songs to check out from these bands that you're not going to hear on FM radio, you're not going to hear on satellite radio, they probably don't play live, and were never made available on a greatest hits set. Okay, unless those strange greatest hits sets that would also throw in bonus tracks, you know, Jethro Tull, I'm talking about you. And this is, you know, again, if you're someone who is a big fan of these bands I'm talking about, and you also know the catalog really well, I urge you also to, after you hear my 5 suggestions, to also throw out 5 of your own. Again, remember, not hits, not radio tracks, not greatest hits selections. Okay, these are going to be more obscure songs that maybe the casual fan has never discovered because they're not album people, and they just kind of, it's like, oh yeah, I got the greatest hits, so yeah, I heard their stuff on the radio a lot. Well, maybe you heard 4 tunes and that's it. And meanwhile, the band's got 150 in their catalog, right? So that's kind of what the vibe we're going for on this show. And that'll be starting this week. I'm not sure exactly which band is going to be our first. I think I kind of have an idea. And I'm also going to, have some of our guest stars who appear on the show help out with some of these as well, as appropriate. So that'll be coming up, and there's really no end in sight to that show. That show can kind of go on, because there's obviously so many notable bands who have had hits who we want to hear about the non-hits or those deep cuts, all right? Visit us on the web at www.seatranquility.org. We're on Facebook. We're on Twitter. Of course, we're here on YouTube all the damn time. Guys, please go and investigate. We pumped out a lot of videos this week. Please go and investigate the cool interviews we've been doing and some of the ranking the albums of some of your guitar heroes. I get a lot of people asking for ranking the catalogs of guitar heroes. So I've been doing them. And, they're really not getting a lot of views. So it's just funny how the stuff that people ask for the most, when I get to doing them, not a lot of people watch them. So while it's flattering that 10,000 people want to watch me, farting around on my guitar, I'm a little disheartened that only 2,500 people will watch me talk about the great Pat Travers or the great Frank Marino or the great Robin Trower. All right, because quite frankly, listening to a discussion about those guys who really know how to play, I'd rather people watch that than watch me noodle around on the guitar. Just being honest. Like I said, I'm flattered that you guys wanted to see me pull out the guitar and play some shit, but I'd rather you watch the other stuff. All right, that's really what I want you guys watching. So it's just, to me, it's a little disheartening that we have about 40,000 subscribers and only 2,500 people will watch a discussion of Pat Travers. All right. Okay. A lot of you have been asking about the Monsters Den. I'll fit it in when I can, but again, it's another program that I spend a lot of time doing here, and really not a lot of people are watching it. And while I love talking about old horror movies and monster movies, and I know there's a small selection of you who enjoy hearing me do that, because people are just not watching that show too much, it's not really a priority right now. So when I'm feeling the muse, I'll do one, but as far as that being a weekly thing, I just don't have the time for it, and just not enough people. There's just not enough demand for it. So it's the way it is, right? But so much stuff going on here. Some cool interviews coming up this week, all right? And lots more programming. Got guests on the show, all sorts of things happening. So stay tuned. If you're interested, hop on over to Comic Book Geezers, my second channel. Give some love over there and check out some of the videos that Wild Bill and Kirk are doing and myself are doing, talking about all sorts of cool comic stuff. Dig my new Doc Savage shirt. I'm loving it. Just got that. Anyway, thanks everybody for watching, and we'll see you real soon. Take care. Bye-bye.